The glorious God, secure from the shepherd clan. I prostrate and make offering to the founder, the endowment, and the destroyer. The one God begotten, great destroyer, the completely perfected, the always being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sagata, ruler of the world, supreme guide of human beings in good faith, teacher of gods and human beings, to you who completely and fully await his blood, the glorious conqueror, the secure from the Shakya clan, I prostrate and make offerings to the founder, the endowment, and the destroyer, the one God begotten and great destroyer, the completely perfected and fully awaited being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sagata, ruler of the world, supreme guide of human beings in good faith, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the secure from the Shakya clan, I prostrate and make offerings to those supreme amongst you who perform on this earth. You paced out 7 strides, demonstrating grace and goodness and truth. You who are wise, therefore, prostrate. Your bodies are consecrated in God, restoration like a golden nun, flame that blazes like a free world, mirror of the best of all you, I prostrate. With the supreme signs of excellent honesty, color like gold, do I prostrate. Illustrious like you, supreme lords and monarchs, incomparably wise one, do I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the Founder having all understanding, the Guild of Merit, polishing like a glass fish. To you, the one God to thusness, I prostrate. The purity that frees one from attachment, the virtue that frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime reality, the Dharma that pacifies, I prostrate. Those who are liberated and who also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realization, who are devoted to the moral precepts. To you, the sublime community intending virtue, I prostrate. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha, to all three every devout homage, to all worthy of respect, bowing with bodies as many as all bronze atoms in all aspects, with supreme faith I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions. Perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a visual aberration, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all seeing, subdue the foul faults and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness and death. To page 15 for the Heart of Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. I prostrate to the Arya Triple Gem. Thus did I hear at one time that Babylon was dwelling on Asubam's mountains of Rajya together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagawan was absorbed in the concentration on the factories of the Lord Buddha, perfection. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avatamsaka looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and evolved those high perfect forms of thinking. Then, through the power of Buddha, they were all very perfectly ascended. Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avatamsaka became established great and miraculously profound perfection of wisdom. He said that when a bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avatamsaka said this to the venerable Shariputra, Shariputra, any son of the lineage of the Lord Buddha, who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom, should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly, as high perfect forms of thinking, Shariputra. Perform his activities magnificent form, emptiness is not other than form, form is also in the same way, feeling, discrimination, composition of factors and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, form cannot be without emptiness. Without characteristic, unproduced, unseen, sustained, not, not, conditioned, not fulfilled. Omero Jame Jame Dame Game Yi Namaju Kanjamane Madu Bambi Madu Basame Kajime. Ajay Bade Amen and the Jende Dunga Gunjo Dago Badamami Jimmy Dawame Madu Bayamane Nana Gunjo Badamami Jimmy Dawame Everybody Jibengo, the Wajibengo, Lanamihango, Minyamada Yambengo. Well, the year that you were Jibengo, the Daga de Gandamara, the Barasanga, so hard. Daga de Gandamara, the Barasanga, the Mani, Yes, a mother was always a The mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering should be known as the truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared Tayata Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhisoha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it is like that, it is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as your Bhadrata rejoiced. The Bhagavan having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharidaviputra, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara, those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, Asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. Page 25 for the short mandala. Sajin Shi Joji Me Do Ram Re Ra Le Shi Nyen Den Jen Badi Sanje Shin Me De all bring together. Je ba shu ye de lam tam ba je na ye chu gu ga la Sanje Jedan Zoji Janan Lang Janjo Bada Dani Dage Chujin Jive Sanan Je Dola Benji Sanje Dovara Sanje Jedan Zoji Janan Lang Janjo Bada Dani Jazan Je Dage Chujin Jive Sanan Dola Benji Sanje Dovara Sho Sanje Jedan Zoji Janan Chanjo Bada Dani Jasan Shen Dagi Chujin Jive San Tola Benji Sanje Dubra Show. Kangi Dinjin Dewa Jong, Gowa Mewa Jimewa, Chewa Mewa Damia. Hoa Mewa Do Mewa, Tade Dimenti Jime, Dowa Nishi Deva, Zoba Sanje Mananji. Tamba de la Jaze, Lo, Ganga, Zenye Seve, Dawa Naje, Bawa Yi, Deme Shine Denze. Kodan de la Jaze, Lo, Tonyi Jesu de Jobe, Lo, Chichi Sinde Kanje Denjo. Chana Vema Denze Jazo, Lo, Zawa de Zajende Lendo, Isho, Banden Zeve, Lama Rambosh. Taki Juru Vende de Jene, Gade Jime, Gane Jizon de Guzon do Jingu do Zedo, So. 다간도 그래데 우기 만차다 온라인 니니 가시지 요레스로 근데 무스요 가시체 근데 드린 다 믹스 심바시데 털어야 네 쇼셰디 당하는데 단대 주주디 이마 가시지 때다 각기 록다운되더라 이내야 최지엘로 록다운 지도 말해서 최신기지로 록다운 지도에 제요 말해서
So today we have gathered for these few days. Most people are listening online, some have directly gathered, and our purpose is to listen to this teaching on the parting from the four clingings, parting from the four attachments. And whilst we are under the conditions of lockdown, that doesn't mean your mind is locked down, because one can still practice. Well, of course, Dharma means practice mind.
제가 다 쟁이 도샤. 저 뒤준 지나도 방법이다. 알려가 방법이었어. 슈체 뒤들어가면도 진단이야 뒤들어가면도 슬라고라. 다 데레 딜라요 마레스. 다 뒤져요스다레. 데레 익스큐즈요 마레스.
We would say those conditions are able to turn adverse circumstances into the path, into the spiritual path. Quite frequently one says, oh, I'm busy, I don't have time to practice Dharma, or I don't have time to study. Now there's no excuse, right?
저는 먼저 내가 군론지 검데스 잡라 군론데스 검자위나.
So let's begin by setting the motivation. Let's begin by setting the motivation.
예, 건조하고 거구대라.
Yeah, I'll hold it like this. It's on.
Do you on? On 쉐이베. 거구대라. 야 마코나나 아니 온라인 얘기를 강해요리야.
Yeah, it's on. What else would you like me to do? It's switched on.
주셔야 하는 거라. 먼저 그 고문도나나 라브셔스 카야마 컨셉에 온라인으로 뒤져 대대거라. 마코나 아니 돈다 말. 아니 가지고를 마코나 배대대. 고문도나나 고문도 라브셔. 먼저 탑시 체적으로서.
Yeah, so let us know if you can't hear and we'll try something else.
야다 니를 곰데스 껴로. 꿀롱 고미야 워시죠.
So let's meditate on motivation for a few minutes.
제가 먼저 간이에게 최대 다 사제에게 그 난고 산제베다 추나 추주시도 사자.
Yeah.
근데 사제에게다 아니 추에게다 닝구도 오지래. 근데게 야 추기 닝구도 오지 닝기 총화데 개발상분이 된 년바데 ङ에랑 나랑 찍고게 치도 많이 봐. 심지 신의 펜바시 두야게 치도. 네 닝기 티치도 학월도다. 단다데 근저 온라인 얘기 같이 주변에 저런서 야라 파도 수도 마셔서 주주 직직 다다마 대제야 무엇이 년위나 뒤주 돌아면 가르치 교이나 사다와도 제적으로 뒤주 ton도 퇴진 차안에 제적으로 내가 저거 있는 가르치고 있나야 디 딕주도 데스키도나 야고 여러니 딕주디 야고 키기 대체 등에 최대 야고지 인기 년바디 나라 지구 체대만 봐 심지 신의 표현 바식 체등에 인기 선배 꿀노야 고지 제트나 디케이션 보레스라
So this teaching we are listening to that became pervasive in Tibet from the Sakya tradition coming down from Sakya Kungin Nyingbo. One should realize the fortune to listen to this and listen to this with the motivation to benefit all beings. So in that sense, if you are listening online, it would be good. Well, of course, here one is not just listening to this teaching for oneself, but with the motivation to benefit all living beings. And if you are doing so online for the duration of the hour, it would be good to be able to keep the discipline of being able to keep still for that hour and just focus on the teaching without getting up and going here and there. And if one can do that for the duration of the sessions, that would be good motivation. So once more, to benefit all beings.
Hoya da gawa gom tiring mezidele ya sajegi mixegi chugi ningbo dendeji ningi chungwa de kewa sangbo yin sen wone kewa sangbo re da de dende chu zachimo mangbo yor dele nyeyagi chajen tunjen zanggo yo marwa tiring ane sajegi chugi shimbashi degi tole ya ane ngara ningi chungwa de kewa sangbo yin sen gawa gom wone sangbo tangshin ane gawa gom go yore shi yore sirwa.
Yeah. So then one should rejoice, thinking that one has the chance to listen to these teachings, which are the essence of the Dharma. There are many teachings on the Holy Dharma, but to get the opportunity to listen to that Holy Dharma is very rare, very difficult. So therefore one should rejoice that one has the chance to listen to these parting from the four attachments.
다 두스체나 단데 드링다 다산이 주든이 제도 주주 죽을래요 말아 주주 죽나라 아니 개주게 주주 숨쟁에 주주 숨래요 말아 주주 숨래 세상 네게 대화 주주 단다디 주주 타고견제게 된jo 제보지요 다디 다리 마시 단다디 다리 짜와 그런 거는 짜와 시디 가는 마저 짜와 시디 야고지 시도이나 아니 제래양고 지메 투즈라나 지주 타고견제게 단다 저다 제슈들이 지주 타고견제 저들이 네 아니 지단데 이기 딘데 인서래 다디 중림라고 좀 마셔요인데 이게라 마 중림 직당 숑무시세 대전이 소리 셰나 다 드린로 마 중림 중에 림바로지 콩준바다 최대 콩준베 중림 중에 림바로 중림디 마직 셰나 대닝 저여르 되네네 아 숑무시세 제 대전이 소리 셰샤나스로.
So when we look over the next 2 days, there might be 6 hours, but then that's only 3 because it has to be translated. So there isn't a lot of time. The text we are using is, so then in that sense, then we're going to stick to these 4 root lines. The most extensive commentary, Jetsun Drakpa Gyaltsen, was given there. So then, we're going to keep to those essential 4 lines, but later when you have time, you can go more thoroughly through this commentary by Jetsun Drakpa Gyaltsen. In short, it would be good to go through like the source of the teaching. How did it come to be, that perspective? And then after that, because that's quite beautiful, and after that come to the actual body of the text.
세상 단다 사진 공간인고 사진 공간인고 아니 큰 릭디 큰거리다 큰릭 단다
나름
단다디 단당도 사제다리도 와데 사제다리
야
사제다리기 미주들이다 미주들 통마되네 총으로다 네 큰릭 덴베다 큰릭 덴베데 yen상다 큰릭 쓰려 릭디 다 배배게 릭 몽보지 유엔나라 큰릭 쓰니디 뭐라 네 뒤에 다지 중주간에네 근데 농대 총네 다디 부구디 마웅발라야네 근데 다 덴베다고 차도 그래 세상에 기계에 오시된 거래서도 발을 넣어서 발을 넣어서 돼 발을 넣어서 하게네 산이 공원인 볼때 저랑 뒤쪽 그래서 가서 그래 지진 잠배양 되네 시럽 두그레스 네 지진 잠배양 참 다와 중리슈는 지진 잠배양 셰스네 오늘 지진 잠배양게 단다디 셴바시데게 담바디 사진 공간인 몰라 두스 지진 잠배양랑 그 송션조 중고지 두스 차되게 요래스라.
So firstly then we're going to look at the source or the historical perspective. The teaching is coming from Sakya Kungan Nyingbo, who himself was in the Kun lineage in Tibet. So in Tibet, there were these different lineages of families. This is like a deity lineage of the Kun lineage. He was the one of those holders of that lineage. And it was prophesied that he would become a great holder of the Buddha Dharma in Tibet. Indeed, when he was young, at the age of 12, Parilotsawa, his teacher, Sakya Kunga Ningpo's teacher, recommended he cultivate the deity Manjushri to actualize wisdom. To actualize wisdom, he was advised to do that by Parilotsawa, and he did that for a long period, 12 years. After which time he had a direct vision of Manjushri, and Manjushri spoke to Sachin Kunga Ningpo these 4 lines.
Nini jizun chawa janzengi pechin dina maada di khuang tanda lobero mochin sachi tu pechin di da jizun Sachin Kunga Ningpo ge da khuang tanda sajayagi da tenpa zinyi da zo dina jizun chawa janzengi yigdo la baba yinsar dingi la yigdo la yusa mara ma nga la mishu chigirwa ngakdo la shenne nga ne ma ju ne mishu chigi yigi la yusa mara jizun chawa janzengi yigi la baba stindes kubudwa 아니 지준 타고전쟁기 최지 사자 빈디다 아니 되네 동거 추제 바고는 나다 도도 체제마 규버디 마체바 유네 단다 콘사 겨울무신로 겨울무신 다 섭섭보다 단다 규버디 마냥바 유여되브레 아니 콘사 저거마 지금 굽주 코니로라 나르 다름살 나르와 뒤뒤 탭디 님도래 와 맞아요. 주디. 내데네 제 탭디 냐데 다 로숨주 담으러 왔다 탭디. 디나 로종. 주디 로종 자자제데. 나서 로종 자자제게 체디나 데질. 디 심바시데 디 셰룽 베지 도드시 나오. 데 팅동해. 군두즈네. 게 군두즈네 슈르다. 네 베자데다라. 지동 굽주 거지 권이 더이나 알로니 지자고 숨지서 로다라 어딘데스도 대제라 믹세자 슈베 라마신다즈네 슈베 튕기면도 근데 군주즈네 슈베지 튕기도 어디 셰주도 어디 페이지 톱되어 저래다 한다로
So a little bit about how I received the transmission and teaching of this text, going back to Sakya Kunga Ningpo, who seemed to have a connection with that Kun lineage to Lopin Rinpoche, Guru Rinpoche.
말은 로벤스는 된다디
Kurangi
Lopin 건다 사제 로벤질라 나로
yeah. So
세우면도
yeah, not clear, but Sakya Nimba's teacher. Anyway, this from him, it went to Jetsun Drakpa Gyaltsen. And at that time, coming from Sakya Kunga Ningpo, around that time, the teachings were not transmitted via written text, but just by oral transmission. So in that context, the author of this commentary, Jetsun Drakpa Gyaltsen, was the first to compose a written text with regards to parting from the 4 attachments. And he passed it to the next Sakya. Yeah. There's one before Sakya Pandita, Sakya Dromi. Anyway, then to Sakya Pandita. And then we see the lineage being passed down through the Sakya lineage right to His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama gave this in 1992. About 1992, I think, Dharamsala. And then, so I was present for that teaching and transmission of this text. So this text I have here is the very text that we got back in 1992. So it would have been about 30 years ago, maybe a bit more. So quite long.
어딘데라다 다디 중림라고 이제 또 뛰든데지래 저다 안데서 예버시나다 망고여로다 뒤저게 또 뒤직디그래서와
Yeah. So these are the essential backgrounds of the text. We can go into it in a vast way, but time constraint is there.
다 당보 아니와 흉무시들라와 흉무시들라 다 잠도당 응어당 아니 죽디버 셰셰샤나 베제 디 다다 고디부도
Now, the actual text itself is split into different divisions. You have like these homages, the pledge to compose, the actual text and conclusion.
제가 당은서 단다 강퇴하게 최대 네디 나고산지베 최 디야 태고침베 최래로 제가 네 최대我这 단다兄弟 네 셴바시데데 我这 我 트벌라 남바산지베 지진기 과로 즉 마찬하나 아니 직디 전다데 고구마를 제가 당분 남바산지베 지기 도단로 즉 럽지직 최고야디 개좀 자기 요래서
So now what we come to know is, of course, this is the Buddha Dharma, but within the Buddha Dharma, the text is expressing the vast vehicle, and because it is expressing the essence of wisdom, Prajnaparamita, before we get into that essence of wisdom, Prajnaparamita, we need to have a broad overview of Buddha Dharma, a general premise.
제가 다단당한서 디송거도 좀 된데 가르친 거요래 왜서 봐. 좀 된데 추 가르친 거래 라비나 아니 추나 탐제 귤레중 디유디시 왜서 귤로고 봐 가인 봐. 개종 첨부 되게 송 시제다. 개종 첨부스디 좀 된데 봐. 네 단다디 칙디 박보다 되게 아니 산제 다팅게 산제래라고 한다. 박보다 되게 아니 셔리블 송버와 셔리블 송버라 다디 로주도 아직도 뒤셰비나네 비즈 셰비나 셔리보다 위숭도서 년도지다 년도 사마리 힌두게 배다 스콜라든데요 기도 니자든데요 다콘왜 힌두게 타버톱된 요든데다 셔리보다 위숭인가 지도다 아니 좀 된데다 깨달아 차 다 산제 좀 된데 산제레스인데 자가나라 깨달아 주디네 셔리보다 무슨 좀 된데 챙코다가 아니 바자산이 기왕하면 바자산이 단디 디징 연구도스 다 domba직 제고도스 봐 거니 닝가라 되와 좀 쉬어져요 아니 맞지 박바다도 된다 광화대 상문나라 좀 된데 이제 당보대 광화대 상문을送라 dem바시 총고送라 디소네네 박바다도 선용을 배다 선용 배는데 샤르부제네 샤르부다디 덤바레샤스 배 박바다도디 치저와 제부쇼제 줄람 시시두바 배 다지 가소레 폐 수부바 제와잠이다 덤바 딘이세 초란 덤바 좀 된데 임베스 덤바 좀 된데 맹아 덤바 좀 된데 기ዱ인스 되네 샤르부 다 기둑딜라다 다가지지나 개겐데다 산유미자와 쉬브지요래 좀 된데 제가 도긴스 좀 된데 가르친 것도 좀 된데 다 처배 망보선 것도 아니 저랑 봐 좀 된데 제제는 쉬내하고 요래 좀 된데 배추 아니 사보 자체 뭐 띵사보 쉬브든데 송고도 말에 샤르부 꼬치꼬치 알아 뉴뉴지 송다스로 안에 대 바보다 되지 아니 천안탐제 귤레존 디지디지 시고서 귤로고 보면 개전 준비 되게 송사데 아니 바보다 되지 셔르불로 송다 셔르불로 똑바지에서 균대에게 남샤게 똑바지에서 이 똑바지에는 셔르불 파신 바 외송래야다 외송이래 외송래야 아니 당연히 셔르 좀 된데 제가 도도 좀 된데 식된데 승구도 소도 들어가 기록 제소스 전화 담제 줄로 좀 디지 시보다 줄로 간데 기존 좀 배트가 송서 바보 위송 퇴었다가 위송 줄로 배 셔리블을 하고 했다고 같은데 계도 배 위송데 배 리덥 첨부 아니 바자 두고 산제단 랜드 숙좀 쉬워 연결이래도 그니 다가랑 땅 아니 다가랑 좀 된데 제가 도그랬어요. 아니 그랑 힌두기 그루드 jel라다 그루니 제제 여러 저랑도 가르치긴 제당 아니 좀 된데 고다면 제가 두긴 스티 좀 된데 스키요머 고다면 제가 두긴 가서는 그런 게 최 직대 거자는 아주라 냠도 또 보면 뭐 총선 저랑도 다 어제 제일 쇼스야메 라레스로 아니 두긴 인생다 아니 건조 상마다 저랑이 도나 안zo 러면 요 말했어 아니 내나라 저랑이를 하고 해 또부터 요 말해 저랑이 이게 또부 될래 터지죠 안zo 천이 제일 두긴 있어요 네 기둥이 제대 티제 셔르부다 외송이게 좀 된데서 제가 좀 아니 저 낭백이 긴두기 데려와도 통마와도 내 총으로 어디래다 최대 책디 내가로 어디 다딩에 지시자 그러지만 중림라고도 닝저보다
Yeah. So this account then of the general overview of Buddha Dharma we can hear in the following verse, Pakpatude.
바바다 다두
Pakpatadu. So the verse goes that all things come together, well, all things are a product of causes, and all things cease. This was taught by the Tathagata. So all things come into being due to causes and conditions. This was taught by the Tathagata. And the reverse of that, their cessation, was also proclaimed by the great renunciate. And there is a history behind this verse that one in the retinue of the Buddha, Pakpatode, said this verse. And how it came to be was at that time in India, there was, of course, Shariputra and Ursong. And these two at that time were, in fact, Hindu scholars. They were Hindu scholars. They were not yet following the teaching of the Buddha. They were going for the Hindu liberation. But at that time in India, Buddha had become very famous. And Buddha had become very famous, and they heard about Buddha's teaching. And so that one day, these two, Shariputra and Ursong, who at that time practicing this Hindu path, saw Pakpatude, who was a disciple of Buddha, and they saw how subdued he was, how peaceful he was. And just by seeing his presence, his subdued mind, they actually asked him, "Are you the Buddha?" Shariputra asked, "Are you the Buddha?" To which Pakpatude replied, "No, I'm not. I'm not the Buddha." And Shariputra said, "How could that be? You're so subdued." But then Pakpatude replied, "But yeah, my teacher is the Buddha." So Shariputra kind of requested Pakpatude to give some brief teaching of the Buddhas. To which he replied, "I couldn't possibly do that. I can't teach as well as the Buddha. I couldn't teach what the Buddha teaches." But Shariputra kept requesting and requesting. After which time, he said these verses that all things come into being due to causes and conditions was taught by the Tathagata, and their cessation was also taught by the great renunciate. So this is because in the past, the imprints that Shariputra and Ursong had to meet the Buddha were starting to be awakened. So then they wanted to meet the Buddha, Shariputra and Ursong, because they thought if the disciple of Buddha looks like that and has such a teaching, because just by hearing that teaching, Shariputra, tremendous faith arose in the Buddha, due to those imprints of past lives. Then latterly, Shariputra said to Ursung, today I met one of Buddha's disciples who said these words. And he again reiterated those words to Shariputra. And Papa Ursung actually got more insight than Shariputra just by hearing that verse, because his mental faculties were sharper. So in that case, they decided to go and meet the Buddha directly. Let's set out to meet Gautama the Buddha. But at that time, Shariputra and Ursung had 200 Hindu followers. They were leading them. And they turned to the followers and said, we're going to leave to meet the Buddha. We're deciding to meet the Buddha and hear what this teacher has to say. We're going to leave you behind. And then the disciple said, we have no other teachers than you. If you leave, who will teach us? So they all followed Shariputra and Ursung to meet the Buddha. And this is how the Gendumpa, these Sangha communities, came to be.
제자다 좀 된대지. 전한테 줄래 중 땡대 송으로 땡대. 와. 간시스지 송부이 켄단 된줄 자와 된진 되죠. 시신도 못텔라데스. 간시스시 송부이 켄단 된줄로. 켄단 되면 자와 된진 되죠. 시신도 못텔라데스다. 좀 된대지. 네 땡진 땡대 통 땡진 균대기 땡대. 안 땡대기 남샤. 다 남버선 집에 될 통에 아니 제르무신 대화 사과를 계속 땡대되면 나는 송도 단다 공부를 있나 땡중 통에 든지 좀 된대라 대화 계속 좀 된대 이 땡대 규단 제외 남샤디다 치우지 송으로 먼저 가랑도 창문라다 단다 심바시대지 코든 차발라 당부 균대가 남샤디 야고지 현재 균대가 남샤디 아니 코든데 야고지래나 아니 낭배기 지 대니기 남샤 대시 남샤 겹성그 남샤 아니 지 산제세야당 군조 숨세 코든데 용거래스로 제단 대인자 당부 균대기 된데 시고야되다 개심무차되기 요래스로
What this is really saying, this verse that Buddha said, all things come into being due to cause and conditions, is talking about the law of dependent arising, the law of dependent origination. And this is something very much that Lord Buddha set forth, as is alluded to in the praise of Lord Buddha by Lama Tsongkhapa. And latterly, when out of conviction Nagarjuna praises Lord Buddha, he's praising this teaching of causality, the fact that things come into being due to causes and conditions, cause and effect, the law of causality. So if we are about to listen to this teaching on departing from the four attachments, we should understand it in the context of this teaching of the law of causality, because if we do that, we will come to understand within that there are two truths, yet further still three jewels, for example, the sublime jewel of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha.
제가 균대세디 다 치기 균대 남기 균대 말한서다 당보 말한서 수수디 체디 디돌 삼다나 야쇼래로
Yeah.
수수기 대화단 동에 드조 아니 간에 총어래 수수래 어디 삼로 대다야래 시림 당보 내내 삼고 고속으로 해서
The first level of causality we should reflect on, of course, there is outer cause and effect and inner cause and effect. But what we should be working with immediately is this life. So what is the cause of our well-being? What is the cause of our displeasure and suffering? That's the first kind of level we should be working with.
자와 투사디 와델라 투데르다 말아서 디둑세디 아니 규단 젠레 되는 연구요나 아니 대외 대화디 규jen레 되는 연구이도나 아니 규jen 가르레더와 규jen 당도 대외 디기사디 그비하기 규단 젠 가르가르레도 어다 규jen 디게들라 아니 규jen 두야 페나 말아서 디기사디 아니 지 류 대보용야당 아니 셈바 지고야 들어와다 간다로 류디오다 심 지고요나 아니 가란서 미몽버지 땅아 디지유 세계로
Yeah.
배샤 망고유 아니 강바지고유 모르지고유스나 디지유 시그레 아 대연하다 되기도 하러 아니 강바지고다 배샤 모라유니다 빌린 밀린이야서 기후 연구를 기후민도 혼들어 디지레디 류데오당 삼바지고요나 디지레다 직도 디지 시기도 페베질레 디지 디지 무슨 소와 쓰다 디지 대화 류데와 심지어 무슨 소와 쓰데 류데오 영향이 차진상 심지어 영향이 튕진상어들라 디지 무슨 소와 어디래다 직도도 직도도 대화점은 다 나래로
Essentially, the root, the essence of it falls on that, doesn't it? One's well-being or one's happiness. So if that's the case, then we have to know what is the cause of bliss and happiness physically and mentally. What are the causes of that? Well, there's a well-being of body and a well-being of mind. Is it enough to say I'm okay because I have money, a car, property, whatever? Well, no, there's also a mind. So when we talk about the essence of it being happy in this life, in terms of this life's happiness, te ki means to be endowed with like a well-being, both physically and mentally content.
자자다 조디 류기 대단래 심기 대단 개차여다
Yeah.
심기 디지두비아디 심기다 대화두비아디 개차여다 류기 대화디 두다 개침보래다 와 이나야 심 시워당 심 바페오유나 류라 나자 유베이네 에네페 스르기는 두비아디 내용고요 야 셈지다 이기데 디두세야데 베나가라서 두스러봐 다 대화요래 다 원시 거기 다 초와로와지 장 데일라데네 이기 다 주미 이지기 남도 이기 대화 이로와자 이기 대화디 깨야 조고래 줄야 조고래로 이디 아니 줄게디 조고체 류기 대화디 때세 디도 가리네 냠바 차냠바 때스 유릉아서 가서 봐. 유릉아로 이제 대기래. 템보스나다. 베나 류지 대어디 수부 대버려지나 남산 수부 내나 남산 용거 말아 봐.
Okay.
와 때스 고진으로 이제 때스 태고라 추차버려지다 직표나 안에 락고 차야다 나야 딘데 용구여로 하고 셈라 딘데기 치기 gen테마데요 말에 셈남도 텐데 수수 삼로 야고직 다운데 기부여든요. 수수 삼로데 툭도 남상을 셈마 기부차르. 세계 증이나라 이게 네 저어디도데 귤렐 하와. 데도가 따딩 알아서 상만 염려여러 하다.
So then we have a body and a mind. Coming back to this notion of deki, or being happy in this life, having well-being in this life. Yes, physical happiness is important, but mental happiness is more so. That is because very much if the body is sick, even if the body is sick, if you're mentally happy, it can kind of outshine or mentally overcome that physical sickness. And also, secondly, there are these on the bodily level, the happiness is often on a sense level, but that can be induced by the mind, isn't it? And so therefore, what happens is the subtleties of mind, the thoughts, are much faster than what's happening on the physical level. So there's a correlation there as well. For example, would you say more stable? Perhaps not the body is more stable, but the body sometimes takes more time to react. So you don't get physically sick straight away, for example, but the mind, in terms of the thoughts we have, can change really quickly to, we can be slightly upset by something really fast or be happy. It can happen in seconds. So, yeah, mental has a big role to play.
Music sem majiwa sho je chaje dede kadula ani ye midu ji nawa juoro je kemoro je ke lam jena ko lamsan semba lamsan juoro da lamsan juoro da ro
Yeah.
this yigi dedu de jundu be chowa gembo ro da chowa gembo shoje da jena 근데 다 디도 유진을 되네 아니 누구도 미시 수직 소녀민도 아데 스스 상당단단을 저거다 세상에 드린 셈바디 기부단 하러 버시나 산인 기부 용도도 알아 근데 세제 아니 둔다지 기부이나 둔다니와 기부냐 다와지 기부나 다와니와 기부냐 아니 체델라지 직대와당 기부당 파베워요나 아니 겨워 치마델에 파베와다 지 용해야지 어두스야네다 당보도 세네 균대되게 균대가 남셔야돼 고등야 고치나 저 심어서니지 요 아직 고등지 레고 요래 디제 고등 마셔나는 단다 데 심버시대 고주서 권한에 고등래야 요 말에 당부 균대네 세대기 디도네 제 드링기 디도 산인 디도 다와니와 아니 세디 저치마 다 저치마서야지라 두주 요요다 메세디가나 지난다디 로다 고 망부지다 세대강 라마게 되기요르들레 저 치마 대 삼무당 거야지 차대도 알아.
So therefore, that mental level of happiness or lack of, to give an example, if someone is feeling sad or a bit down, but they're in the area where people are happy and laughing, that sad person can easily be buoyed up or lifted up by that environment of being around others that are positive. And the feelings mentally are so kind of sensitive like that, so quick to react. And such a state cannot be kind of made by someone externally, isn't it? That mental change is coming from within the person. So we would, if we take that a step further, the present moment's happiness is related to, because we're looking at the law of causality, cause and effect. The present moment's happiness is related to latter moments, and today's happiness goes on into tomorrow. And if we can cultivate that mental well-being days, weeks, months, and finally, if this life is mostly happy and you're happy and well-being, then the future lives will be also happy. Now, this question of future lives comes up, doesn't it? And that's good. It's good for us because coming back to causality, if we're going to listen to this teaching on departing from the four attachments, we need to have some basis of an understanding of the law of causality. And then the question comes in, doesn't it? Are future lives there or not?
제가 어디지? 다 뒤집니다. 다 대샤로 다 단다 가랑도 개체셔디. 저랑도 망보지야. 아니. 로 록다운 제셔디 심랑 암다다. 마데와 개체. 내주 생주 쉬우쉬우 따고 말해다. Sorry.
Yeah.
산주 괜히 미래를 담을 랍데 처음에더라.
Yeah.
다 슝게 세다단도 하고 체. 아니 슝게 마템베chen jogo 룰도서 로. 파주도 카레자야 라버트야. 파주 미드메 바로 되어야도서 미 파르베 디둘라 되어야로. 스스 나데 되어면도 나직 지금에서 란진지 치타로. 란진지 제나 아니 란진지 그거군지 고스 아니 동에다 마지오 상마데네 서자라. 전주 선바데서 샘지 신이 텐데 냐월라 겨울링에서 그런가 샘지 신이 디둘라 데스 동에 데스 냥 뭐 가려요 봐. 디지고나 세세 데스고 그래. 세상 아니 디저디람도 저기야. 하바도 알아서 넘저 카레자데 다 곰시 여머라. 아예 카레자는 부숙 도보다도 파즈르드 다 카레 잡라고 ora 슝기 덴베로아 데 팀세요라다 아니 카레 자오르다 가르세나 수수 되어 예매 계셔 말아 파르볼라 미 파르볼라 나자 수수 나자 매웨나 파르볼라 심나 남도 마제야다 파르볼 심라야 데 강념마서야라 카레 메나 미디 카레 잠도 nga 미디 틸게 지생면서 파르볼라 강념 되기도 하잖아 고직 직서자라다 나도 미 남도 그 직서자 카레 마잖아 나저 고르 고르세 아직 직심은 남도를 써서도 어떻게 카레 잠도 nga 나저 고멍해 제가 나저 파르벌 30 전에 수수대에서 마대버 여어디 최소 적으로 그봐 먼저 전주 선바에서 심지 신이 되들 단달 냐월 지긴 먼저 벽을라마 망고 그 뭐라서 누죠라 와나야 되서 상와 코란슬로 당제 와나여다 저런서 잠르메월 와나라서 같이 있는 거여라서 저런서 추그 바자 총로 지나서 난거래 나의 누저 대대 르테스타이다로 나 공발되는 지우시죠 공발되는 디 녀르불 망고 거예요 말아 공발라 나와 지우시 대요로 네 안도 테스 르탄제 신비대 세어다요 세상에서 테제 두리대 세워래서 가디나 nga 냥냥 상문데 티 초면도 하든 데베데 데 요말 테스타 신라데 30대 세워래서 아니 야고요래서
In general, it's good to direct one's thought to others in the sense that we are on lockdown. We're in this lockdown. We've come to this end of this first session, so therefore not a lot of time. Anyway, don't listen to the news too much. Of course, anyone can say anything. It's like that, isn't it? But we do have to kind of heed what the government says and their limit on a basic level to wear a mask if we go out, to wash our hands. Because if we don't do those things, it shows that we're being quite selfish, and we know that any type of suffering we experience or unhappiness comes from self-cherishing. Conversely, the bodhisattvas are prepared to sacrifice a tremendous amount, to even go to hell for the welfare of beings. And in that regard, be tremendously patient with these things we have to put up with during lockdown. If the bodhisattvas can put up with such vast mind training things for the welfare of others, then we should heed to the laws. Well, one does that because one is considering others, not just oneself, not just thinking I, but having a thought of others. Because if you're thinking of others when you go out into the community, it's not just the fact that you're thinking that you want to prevent sickness, but it is their mind. They might start having these thoughts like, oh, I'm wearing a mask, but they're not. So they kind of get worried in that sense, isn't it? That's a possibility. But coming back to the sacrifices that were made by some of the lamas in this lineage who would give the empowerments to us, or, like here in the West, without us even having refuge, just so that we get the imprints from the Buddha Dharma. That's quite a sacrifice made on those levels. So therefore, one should be able to do these little things. And yes, I've had coming here, I had to make some adjustments to live in the West, whereas in the monastery, everything's kind of set up for practice much easier. So I've made adjustments and difficulties coming here as well. So we should be able to adjust.
Oh yeah, that is our.
So we will break for this junction.
To page 31 for the short mandala.
lo ji bu ji jun shi mi do dang re ra ne shi nin de jin ba de san ji xin de mi de do ge nan da jin lan ju pa ra shu ge wa de nyu de da la ma zan je do je je do wa je je ma le wa de z lo go wa shu wa je ju su je ren bo shi ma je wa ne ju je je wa ni ma me ma ya ko ne ko ne Sunam de dan je se ba ye ko ma de ji ji da de ne ga da na da shi ve la do de si ve so le do ra shu See you 11 o'clock.